is part 2 of the hydrogen atom problem. In the last video, we saw that the system Hamiltonian was separated into the center of mass part and the relative part. And now what we're trying to do is we'll try to separate the three coordinates in the spherical system for the relative part and try to look at the angular momentum business and see how these two are connected. Okay. So we're focusing on the relative part, like I said, because the center of mass part was just giving us a free particle solution and which contributed only an overall phase to the system, and hence we are just focusing on the relative motion. So the relative Hamiltonian was given as p rel square by 2 mu plus v of r. Since we'll just be dealing with the relative part, we are dropping the notation and we'll just write h and p here. Okay. Now in the operator form, if you write, so we know that p relative is written as del square, we had earlier written a small r here, but since we are dropping the relative part, so we'll just call it grad now. We'll just call it the del part. So the eigenvalue equation, we saw it in the last video also. We write the Hamiltonian psi of r and E psi r. Now we know that our problem has spherical symmetry, okay, because it's a central potential. So for that we resort to spherical coordinate system. We have the conversion formula here, which is familiar to you, I believe. So the volume element can also be written as r square sin theta d r theta d phi. And what we'll just be doing is we'll try to write this eigenvalue equation in the spherical coordinate system. So we know in spherical coordinates the gradient operator is given as r cap 2 by 2 r, theta cap 1 by r, and phi cap 1 by r sin theta. And the Laplacian operator is also given like this. So all you have to do is you have to plug in this value in place of this Laplacian operator, and then this eigenvalue equation can be written as this. So this is straightforward algebra, nothing much to do here. Just so that this looks a little more intimidating, to make sure that you understand it, see this as an equation of the form h some state E equal to some eigenvalue state E, because essentially what you have here is this entire term plus v is the Hamiltonian, and this is the state, and this is the eigenvalue. So this is nothing but the eigenvalue equation written in the spherical coordinate system. Now to further separate r theta and phi system, before that we have to look at the angular momentum business, and why exactly is that necessary will become clear after we do the algebra. So we'll straightforward jump to the angular momentum part. So first let's look at the classical angular momentum. Classical angular momentum is defined as r cross p, right? And since we know that central force has no torque, okay, why? Because torque is given as r vector cross f of which is function of just r, right? So it's straightforward, but see if you can get it. This just r, here it's something that's just a function of r. So you know that it's a cross product, so this comes out to be 0. So the central forces have no torque, and because of that, since we know that torque is equal to dou L by dl by dt, since this is 0, this means L is constant. So if you have a system where the net torque acting on the system is 0, the angular momentum is conserved, right? So now this also follows from the Noether's theorem, because we know that central forces systems are spherically symmetric, that is, it doesn't depend on the angular orientations. What do I mean is, say if you have this distance r, as long as you keep the distance r fixed, no matter how you rotate, you bring it here, say the two particles, if one is here and other is here, the problem still remains the same. Okay, so the problem has a spherical symmetry, and because of the symmetry, in accordance with the Noether's theorem, there has to be a quantity conserved, and that conserved quantity here is angular momentum. So pertaining to our question here in the hydrogen atom problem, we have identified a symmetry because of the nature of central force, and now we'll look at angular momentum, because conserved quantities always help in further simplification of the problem. So in quantum mechanical angular momentum, so we already know the definition of angular momentum as r cross p. If we write the coordinates, which is easy, you just write 3 components here, 3 components here, take the cross product, and this is what you will get. So all you have to do is you have to convert these forms into the operator form. Okay, so Lx can be written as since pz will be given as p is equals to minus I h cut dou by dou z, right? So you just have to plug in that value. Py can be written as minus I h cut dou by dou y. I've taken minus I h cut common. Similarly for Ly and Lz. Okay, now the important thing is we'll try to look at commutation relations. Okay, so before we do that, we have to understand these three relations. That uncertainty principle tells you that you cannot measure momentum and the position along a particular axis simultaneously. That means that these two operators do not commute. Okay, but you can measure position along x and momentum along y. These two operators commute, means these are simultaneously observable. Okay, so these are two things that help us simplify things and see what the commutation relation comes out to be. So if you take a computation of Lx Ly, you know any computation relation is just given as Lx Ly minus Ly Lz Lx. Okay, so you plug in the value. So what you have, this first term into this, okay, and then the second term into this. Okay, now what you'll do is you'll try to open the brackets. Okay, know that it's not just plain algebra that you can shuffle the terms, it's all operator form, so you need to be cautious about the order in which you are writing the operators. Okay, so you just open up all the brackets. Now what you have to do is you have to see which two operators commute, and say if I say A and B commute, which essentially means AB minus BA is 0, which also means AB is equal to BA. That means I can shuffle the order and it will not make a difference. So since we know Z and PX commute, we can shuffle the order. Similarly here, here, here. So I've tried to show arrows wherever possible. So the algebra, so by necessary shuffling, it can be further reduced to this form. And whatever are the intermediate steps, I've shown it here. Now another point to be noted is that momentum along x and momentum along y, they can be simultaneously measurable. Okay, so they commute. So px py, py pz and px pz, they all commute. Okay, so you can change the order in which they are written as well. So pz px can be shuffled and written as px pz, and similarly for other terms. Why are we doing it? We do it because we'll get common terms here which will help us cancel them. So we'll cancel the terms. What you get is you get a 4-term expression. You take the common terms outside, so what you see here is it's just the computation of z and pz, and you know that the computation of z and pz is given as I h cut by the uncertainty relation, much like just x and px. It's just the same thing written in z axis now. So you put in the value and what you get is I h cut lz. So what did we start with? We started the computation of Lx Ly and we got I h cut lz. So if you just do the cyclic permutations, you can go through the algebra again for practicing. So Lx Ly computation comes out to be I h cut lz, Ly lz comes out to be I h cut lx. So you're cyclically permuting Lx Ly lz, these two, and then these two, like that. Okay, so now even in the spin angular momentum part, it was important to consider an operator s square. Okay, this gives us an insight as to for the eigenvalue equations of the problem, and also the magnitude of the spin angular momentum vector. Okay, if you don't know about it, we'll just use it directly here in the angular momentum part, the orbital angular momentum part. So if to consider the operator L square, which is nothing but the dot product of L, and comes out to be just Lx square plus Ly square plus Lz square. Okay, now what we will be doing is we will try to see if L square commutes with Lx, Ly and Lz. Okay, so you put in the value here of L square and you have Lx here. Okay, so what you do here is then you try to separate the terms. You know, Lx with Lx commutation will be 0, and this is further expanded. So now what you do here is you write Ly square as Ly, you write and Lz square as Lz. Now smart thing, you add two terms plus and minus, and here also you add two terms plus and minus. Okay, why do you do that? So that you get a common Ly outside and you have a commutation of Ly Lx remaining inside, and here what you get is you have a commutation of Ly Lx and a common Ly outside. Okay, you can pause the video and give it a thought if this actually makes sense. Similarly for these two terms and for these two terms. Okay, so you have 4 groupings essentially. We know that Ly Lz, because we just saw they commute and give us minus I h cut, this will commute and give us minus I h cut, this will give plus I h cut, and this will plus I h cut, right? And this all cancel and gives out to be just 0. Okay, so the commutation of L square with Lx comes out to be 0. Similarly, you can do for Ly and Lz, and what you'll see is that L square commutes with all three of them, means they are simultaneously measurable. Okay, now to draw a parallel between orbital angular momentum and spin angular momentum, you see that these are actually following the same commutation relations. In the case of spin angular momentum, Sx xy was I h cut Sz and the cyclic permutations, and S square commuted with all three of them. Similarly here, you have Lx, Ly and L square following the same commutation relations. That gives us a hint that they are following pretty much the same algebra. So now if you look at the spin eigenvalue equation, okay, after we did the Stern-Gerlach thing, so this is the eigenvalue equation we got for spin angular momentum. So S square operator has the eigenvalue S plus 1 h cut square, and Sz has the eigenvalue ms h cut. Now you might wonder, why am I writing the same kets for both of them? It is because, see, S square and Sc commute. Okay, what does this mean? If any two operators commute, they are simultaneously measurable and they have simultaneous eigenkets. Okay, simultaneous eigenkets means basically you can write the same eigenkets for both of them. Okay, and hence I've used the same as they are essentially representing the same eigenstates for both the operators. Now since they are pretty much the same, we can expect that L square should have an eigenvalue equation which should look like L plus 1 h cut square, and similarly here it should be ml h cut square, right? And this is the simultaneous eigenket of L square and Lz. Now to understand what are these L and ml meaning here, so L is orbital angular momentum quantum number. So what does it do? So in your space, so if you draw out your orbital angular momentum vector, so square root of L in n plus 1 h cut will give you the magnitude of this vector. Okay, so it's in a way telling us what the magnitude of this orbital angular momentum vector is. Okay, and the permissible values for angular momentum quantum number is 0. So for orbital angular momentum quantum number is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And ml means orbital magnetic quantum number. What does this tell? It tells that if you have this angular momentum vector, what is the magnitude of z component of it? Okay, the z component of it has a magnitude ml h bar. Okay, and the permissible values for ml is minus L to plus L in integer steps. This I hope this is all familiar to you. Now comes the question, like, why are we actually doing this? So doing this, we got position representation of Lx, Ly and Lz. Okay, and now we want the position representation of this eigenstates LML. Okay, once we know this spatial dependence of this state, this is essentially what this will be drawn parallel to. It will essentially be, okay, let me take it as some psi. Okay, not exactly the total psi, but you have this r, theta and phi, right? So once you understand how does this depend on space, it will help us understand what are the shape of the orbitals are, and hence we'll use this algebra to understand our problem.